Well, earlier I spoke to co-founder of the APRI think tank, Lloyd Msipa, about the economic issues that Zimbabwe faces. And I began by asking him how the country could begin to rebuild its shattered economy.
What has just happened has literally united all Zimbabweans to where the problem was. The problem was our president overstaying in power. So that affected the economy, that affected everything else around it, because politics became the elephant in the room. So you would have one election after another. So whatever you're having, you've either the opposition fighting the main party or the main party fighting the opposition. So there was no focus on the economy. Everything was just politics. So for politics to take a back burner, like potentially what's going to happen now, it means that an enabling environment for the economy to start thriving, will come to the forefront. Because for anybody to come put money in Zimbabwe, they need to have the confidence of knowing that their money is safe, that they can actually bring in their money and be able to take their profits out. In our case, our economy had shrunk so much because of the politics, the toxic politics. Corruption was at a high time level. You wouldn't drive 100 miles without being stopped 20 times by the police for a shakedown. And the same thing in our public services. You wouldn't get a passport without paying a 10 or a 20. And that was duplicated across the public service. So all of that was a sign of an economy that, that was dead, non-functional, because everybody was surviving by hook or crook. Public servants were going for months on end not being paid because the treasury was virtually empty. The president and his wife were drawing money straight from the treasury to go on their foreign travels. There was no accountability. We were literally just a rogue nation. There was nothing to say, this is what is happening. Even the IMF has shunned it. The Paris Club, shunned us. We owed money to everybody. We could borrow, we could not pay back. And the countries like China would come in and literally abuse, our status quo. Come in, throw a few trinkets on the table, we grab at those, but what we actually lose from the whole transaction is much more than what we're getting in.
Let's talk about China in a minute. Let's come back to that. But,
right.
but you mentioned the IMF.
IMF, yeah.
How can you encourage them to come back on board?
See, the IMF has been to Zimbabwe several times, and the main thing that they've always said that if you do not fix your politics, it is difficult for the economy to come mainstream. All the policies that we actually advise you to follow are not possible if the environment is not enabling. So the main thing is that we sort out the politics, because Robert Mugabe had bottlenecked ZANU-PF. And the only party Zimbabwe knows is ZANU-PF from the time of independence. So whatever happened in ZANU-PF, affected the rest of the nation. So the economics, even the opposition parties started modeling themselves on ZANU-PF, because ZANU-PF was the elephant in the room. So by extension, everybody suffered. So now it's like a pressure release, with the exit of Mugabe. We've got, okay, fine, the guy is 25, 26 years old, but what we're seeing now is probably a man who has a different outlook to the world. He's hoping to have a global reach, and we're hoping that Westminster and Capitol Hill will, look at this man. I was watching Peter Hain the other day saying, like, if this man comes in, he represents a different kind of leader. He's not the first independence leader. He is more broad. He's been to China. In the time that he's been vice president, he's actually put in policies that have moved us forward. But there's no point in taking 5 steps forward and then take 10 back. So that's what was happening in Zimbabwe. So we at least now, there's a chance of us, coming up with something and then moving forward. There's a positiveness among Zimbabweans.
Is it fair to say that the brightest and the best have left the country? So you've got to tempt them back, haven't you?
The brightest and the best have left the country because, look, it's a natural thing. It's the middle class, the people who rely on their salaries to pay their mortgages, to pay their HPs. That's the middle class. The first thing they do is they vote with their feet. They leave the country. So those are the brightest and the best. So what you have there is your villagers and the leaders, the upper class. So all they're doing is they're abusing the lower class. So when the middle class see that the politics are now fixed, it is now more encouraging. There's a positiveness. I've been speaking to people. People are saying, look, if this happens, we will go back because we are part of the solution. We need to go there. our ideas of various sectors, engineers, lawyers, nurses, doctors, you name it. Everybody is going back in there because things are going to be done differently. That's what this man is promising. He says he's going to do things differently. That is what we're looking forward to.
Let's look at agriculture.
Yeah.
You know this well-known phrase about Zimbabwe, that it was the breadbasket of Africa.
Yes.
The farms were prosperous and they produced a lot, and then they didn't.
Yes.
And Mugabe took the farms away from the white farmers and gave them to the black workers.
Yeah.
And everything, is it fair to say, from that point on, everything fell apart?
Whenever a revolution takes place, and in this case the revolution was an agricultural revolution, they touched an area which was the heartbeat of the economy. Remember, we were an agri-based economy. So if you touch the land, you've literally touched the heartbeat of the economy. What we did not prepare ourselves for is that when we've taken the land, what happens then? You know, did we have the experts to tell us what to grow? Did we have the, the money to put the seed on the ground? Did we have the facilities for irrigation? Or we have a situation where we went in, took ownership of this land, and within 2-3 years, the land was lying fallow because none of us had a clue on how to, to farm. You get engineers taking land. You get people who have no idea how to, to grow a small plant in a pot, taking a huge tracts of land. So something would have been done differently. I have no problem with the idea of taking the land to make it equitable. The problem I had with the whole thing was the way it was executed. There should have been a way of identifying those who are able to cultivate and do it properly, and then allocate them the land slowly. It was a rush thing, and that upset the whole cut. So that that's the situation we have now.
That was Lloyd Msipa, co-founder of the APRI think tank, speaking to me a little earlier about Zimbabwe's economic prospects.